What's up, Timmers here. Here is my Throwback 7, where I talk about the films that turns 10, 20, 30, and 40. Alright. The films celebrating their 10th anniversary is the 5th Mission Impossible film, Rogue Nation. This is probably the one that has pretty much the craziest stunts Tom Cruise ever pulled off. It was also it was actually the first Mission Impossible movie that Chris McQuarrie directed. Obviously the other ones was always directed by Brian De Palma, Brad Bird. This was pretty much, McQuarrie's Mission Impossible debut film here. And of course it follows, Mission Force agent Ethan Hunt and his team, who are subsequent to their disbandment and Ethan's pursuit by the Central Intelligence Agency here. And of course you had Rebecca Ferguson, I love Rebecca Ferguson in this one. It's really cool. It really is entertaining. It's not my favorite out of the franchise. I think probably Ghost Protocol is definitely up there, but it is a really decent one. Some some really insane, crazy stunts throughout this whole thing. Alright, also turning 10 is Vacation. Now, Vacation, of course, is the legacy sequel, if you will, of the National Lampoon's Vacation. It didn't really get it actually didn't get the best love at the time, but I actually had a fun time with it. It's, of course, stars Ed Helms, who plays Rusty Griswold, who takes his own family on a road trip to Wally's World and order to spice things up with his wife and reconnect with his sons. By the way, his oldest son is played by Scarlett Guzzardo, who recently just played Jimmy Olsen in Superman just recent. But yeah, I actually had a fun time on Vacation. You had Chris Hemsworth, who was hilarious in this one. You also had Leslie Mann. Obviously, you had Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo reprising their Griswold roles too. It's a really fun. Is it as good as the original Vacation? Definitely not. But I still so wholly quite enjoyed it. It was directed by John Agosti and John Francis Daly, who would go on to direct Dungeons and Dragons, Game Night. They also wrote, Spider-Man, the Tom Holland Spider-Man films and stuff. They did a pretty good job with this one, and it's a shame it didn't really get the love it deserved, but it is what it is, I guess. Alright, also turning 10 is Southpaw. Now, Southpaw stars Jake Gyllenhaal, who gained tons of pounds for this one, where he tried to get his life back on track after losing his wife to gun violence. And of course, later, his young daughter, and he of course loses his young daughter to Child Protective Services. It is directed by Antoine Fuqua, who gave us Training Day. He's directing the upcoming Michael Jackson biopic, Micah. He did a really good job with this one. Jake Gyllenhaal did great. You had Forrest Whitaker, 50 Cent, Rachel McAdams. This was also released the same time that Creed came out as well. So we had a couple of cool boxing movies that year, and Southpaw is a really good one. Alright, now also turning 10 on more small affairs, we got Staten Island Summer, directed by SNL and Hawkeye director Rhys Thomas, featuring the likes of Graham Phillips, Bobby Monahan, Colin Jost. Colin Jost also wrote this film as well. It was pretty much like an SNL cast type film. And the film follows Danny and Frank's last summer before college, and they both are working as lifeguards, trying to find summer hookups here. It is really hilarious. It is of course from the people who gave us SNL and stuff. It definitely has some fun moments to it. Colin Jost was hilarious here as a police officer. It is a really decent one if you guys haven't seen that. We also got The End of the Tour, starring Jesse Eisenberg and Jason Segel. This is of course directed by James. I can never pronounce his last name too well. Ponstead, I think his name is. He of course directed The Spectacular Now. He also did Smash with Aaron Parr. This movie stars Jesse Eisenberg and Jason Segel. Jesse Eisenberg plays writer and journalist David Lipsky, who interviews author David Foster Wallace for Rolling Stone magazine. Of course, Jason Segel. Like obviously, at the time we always knew Jason Segel as a comedian guy with stuff like How I Met Your Mother, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, The Muppets. This was really the movie that really showcased more of his dramatic acting chops, and he is actually pretty solid as an actor. Like outside of straight out comedies, like he's great on Shrinking. I think he could have easily got an Oscar nomination for this. He was really solid here. Really good little film if you guys ever see that. Now, films turning 20 this week. Oh boy, I cannot believe these are turning 20. We got the superhero classic, Sky High. Now, Sky High stars Micah Gerano. You also had Dano Panabaker. Linda Carter was in this. Bruce Campbell. Kurt Russell. The late Kelly Preston. And it follows Will Stronghold, played by Micah, the son of two superheroes who is enrolled in an airborne high school for teen superheroes. Definitely has a little bit like an X-Men vibe here. Obviously, they were trying to capitalize on the early 2000s superhero genre because obviously at the time we had stuff like X-Men, Spider-Man, and all. And it was really hilarious here. Directed by Mike Mitchell, who directed one of the Shrek movies, if I'm not mistaken. He did a good job with this. Where was my Sky High sequel? Who knows? But it is a really fun one. Micah Gerano was great. Kelly Preston, R.I.P. Kelly Preston. She was terrific in this. Funny, you had former Wonder Woman herself, Linda Carter, popping up in this. It is a lot of fun, worth giving a go. Alright. Also turning, also turning 20 is Stealth. Directed by the Fast and Furious director Rob Cohen, starring Jamie Foxx, Jessica Biel, Josh Lucas, Abin Mas-Baccarat, years before he played Ben Grimm and years before the Bear. He's done a lot of stuff before the Bear. It was really the Bear that really put me on the map for Abin Mas-Baccarat. Looking at his credit, I did not even realize he was in loads of stuff before he had his big break in the Bear, and obviously years before he had his big break with Fantastic Four. But Stealth, oh boy, this was awful. It follows three top fighter pilots who are joined a project to develop an automatic robotic stealth aircraft. This movie was awful. I remember watching this when I was a little young at the time. It's not so good. I mean, it is a shame because you do got great people like Jamie Foxx, Jessica Biel. The effects wasn't so good. It's just not a good film at all. So, yeah. We also got Muscle Up Dogs turning 20, starring Diane Lane, John Cusack, the late Christopher Plummer, and focuses on a woman's struggle with divorce and meeting new people afterwards. It is a really charming little film. John Cusack, Diane Lane were both really play off each other well. It is a really charming film worth giving a go. Also turning 20 is The Aristocrats. It is a documentary about the famous dirty joke. I'm not going to repeat the joke, but just look up Gilbert Gottfried's The Aristocrats. Yeah. That is one of the most filthiest, dirtiest joke you'll ever want to see, ever. And this has people, being interviewed by the likes of Gilbert Gottfried, Bob Saget. It is crazy to believe we lost both Bob Saget and Gilbert Gottfried in the same year, too, if I'm not mistaken. R.I.P. to them both. You also even have the late, great Carrie Fisher, Hank Azaria. It's one of the funniest documentaries you'll ever want to see. It is really, really showcased that dirty joke perfectly. Gilbert Gottfried was the one who told it, and obviously this did feature Gilbert Gottfried, who was one of the funniest comedians of all time. I used to love Gilbert Gottfried. R.I.P. Gilbert, R.I.P. Bob Saget. If you guys ever want to check this one out, do yourself a favor, give this documentary a go, and listen to the joke. Yeah, if you guys know, you know. Anyway. Now, films turning 30 this week. We got Waterworld, one of the most infamous bad movies of all time. Set of course in the distant future, the polar ice caps have completely melted, and the sea levels risen over 7,000 600,000 here, and it was directed by Kevin Reynolds, who also gave us like other Kevin Costner movies like Prince of Thieves, Fandango, and you also had the likes of Dennis Hopper, uh, Michael Jeter, Tina Madrano, who you might remember as a Napoleon's girlfriend in Napoleon Dynamite. You also had a very young Jack Black. I think this was like one of like Jack Black's first features, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Waterworld is one of the most it's one of the most infamous bad movies of all time. It's just so terrible. Definitely one of Kevin Costner's not so good films. Yeah, I mean it's definitely a fun to watch, but it's not a great film at all. But all right, a film celebrating 20, also celebrating 30th is The Net, directed by At First Sight director Erwin Winkler. It stars Sandra Bullock, Dennis Miller, Jeremy Northam, and is a system analyst with few personal contacts. Learns that all records about the life has been deleted here. This movie came out in the 90s, like 1995. I mean, this movie was way ahead of its time because obviously there was, this movie is all about computers, and obviously computers were pretty popular at the time, and they were obviously up and running, but they're not as like advanced as they are nowadays. I know people poo poo on remakes or whatever. If I have to say which 90 movie deserves an update, it's The Net. The Net is definitely a movie I think is perfect for a remake today. That and the movie Hackers. Those movies I felt like was way ahead of their time, and Sandra Bullock was excellent. I think this was like one of the movies that really put that. It was one of the movies that really put Sandra Bullock on the map for most people. Obviously, it was speed and stuff, but yeah, The Net's a really good one. I mean, I remember I watched this tons of times back in days. I used to always get a kick out of it. It is a really decent film, worth giving a go. All right. Also turning 30 is Operation Dumbo Drop, which is a Vietnam War film or Vietnam action comedy here, uh, which is of course set during the Vietnam War in 1968. Who like of course, Vietnam vets who attempt to transport an elephant through jungle terrain to a local South Vietnamese. It's not really like a live action remake of Dumbo. Like it's obviously we already had that with Disney. It is more like a very different version of Dumbo, really. Of course, you had the likes of the late great Ray Liotta. You had Dennis Leary. Danny Glover. Some really decent cast members. It is a little forgettable, but it is okay to watch once in a while. All right. Oh boy, we got some good ones turning 4 this week. I mean, 4 years old this week, there was something for everyone. First up, we got Weird Science. Of course, from the minds of John Hughes, starring Anthony Michael Hall, young Robert Downey Jr. You had the late great Bill Paxton, Kelly LeBrock. Come on, who did not love Kelly LeBrock in this one? It is about two high school nerds who use a computer program to create the perfect woman, who promptly turn their lives upside down. Weird Science is a classic. I always got a kick out of this one every time I see it. It is an 80s gem. Kelly LeBrock. If they were to remake this today, Kelly LeBrock probably would have been played by Sydney Sweeney. I guess you could say Kelly LeBrock was like the Sydney Sweeney of the 1980s. She was really solid in this one. It definitely has a lot of fun to it. Robert Downey Jr. obviously one of the movies that put him on the map for most people. Bill Paxton plays the douchebag of a brother in this. He is hilarious. It is a really decent. It definitely came out around that John Hughes era, and it is a really fun one worth giving a go. Also turning 40 is the original Fright Night. Written and directed by Tom Holland. No, not that Tom Holland. I mean, Tom Holland was even born when this movie came out. This Tom Holland is, of course, the guy who would go on to direct the first Child's Play movie. He also wrote some, and directed some other cool stuff. This movie, of course, this is actually his debut feature. Obviously, he will go on to direct the first Child's Play and stuff. This, of course, follows Charlie Brewster, played by William Ragsdale, who discovers that his next door neighbor, Jeffrey, played by Chris Sarandon, who will go on to play Officer Norris in Child's Play. He discovers that his neighbor is a vampire. And of course, when no one believes him, he decides to get this TV host who acted in films to stop Jerry's killing spree. The original Fright Night is a classic. It is a horror fan favorite. They, of course, did do a remake of it with Colin Farrell, which I actually did not mind the remake. With Colin Farrell, the late Anton Yelchin. That was actually pretty fun. But the original definitely holds a place in my heart. It is a lot of fun. It is scary throughout. Chris Sarandon, really cool to see him go from a vampire to competing against Chucky in the first Child's Play. He was also in Princess Bride. Oh yeah, he was also in. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was also in The Nightmare Before Christmas too. So he has a really cool resume there. But yeah, the original Fright Night is one of the most classic vampire movies of all time. Highly recommend that. Alright, also turning 40 is a fan favorite of mine. And I used to watch this tons of times as a kid. I actually did rewatch this just recent on Tubi. Turning 40 is Sesame Street Presents Follow That Bird. Of course, this is about Big Bird, who, of course, is assigned by a social worker to move away from Sesame Street, to move with, a bird family. And when, of course, he does not really care much for the family, he decides to, travel on foot back to Sesame Street. Of course, there there are these two circus people who also try to, get him for his act. One of which is played by Joe Flaherty, who played that heckler from Happy Gilmore. You had some really great cast members in this. You had the likes of John Candy, the aforementioned Chevy Chase, Wayne Jennings. If you guys want to hear Big Bird and Waylon Jennings perform a really nice song together, this is one for you. I always get a kick out of that Ain't No Mountain You Can Hide song. I used to listen to that tons of times. And obviously, you also do have Sesame Street appearances by the likes of Oscar the Grouch, Super Grover, many others. This is, of course, was the first time Sesame Street, came to the big screen at the time. Because obviously, Sesame Street became very popular in the 60s and 70s. And yeah, Follow That Bird is just a classic. I used to get a kick out of this one. I used to always love Sesame Street as a kid, so I decided to pick this one up. I've actually picked this one up at the library tons of times. It is a really good one. It is a lot of fun. It is fan favorite. It's just a really good one. Alright. And some really great songs too. I mean, the soundtrack is killer. I mean, the Elmo one, Grouchland, that's okay, but nothing beats Follow That Bird. The 40s, there was something for everyone. There was a sci-fi comedy, a horror comedy, and a movie for the kids. So that was pretty much I guess you could say that was the Barbenheimer of the 80s. Anyway, that's pretty much it there. Let me to you guys, which of these films stand out to you the most? To me, the 10-year one is actually going to go to Vacation. I know the cool thing is you say Rogue Nation or whatever. I actually had a fun time with Vacation. The 20-year one is going to Sky High. The 30-year one is going to The Net. And the 4-year one, I should say maybe Follow That Bird or Fright Night, but I'm going with Weird Science. Weird Science is just such a classic. Anyway, drop comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell for notification. This is Tim.